Hey guys, I just wanted to spend a quick minute and tell you my favorite books that were most impactful from 2017. I know I'm a few months late for this, but if you're, kind of in a position where you're looking for a new book, something good to read that will change your life, here's a handful of options. Number one, this is in reverse order, okay? So Grant Cardone's 10X Rule. This is, to me, mainly a motivation book, and it was motivating. It helped me really want to up my game in a lot of different ways and areas so that I could indeed, triple, quadruple my returns. So, and that applies to different things, not just business and things, right? Peaks and Valleys, sort of a fictional story, but very relatable as far as and it's kind of parable-like, where we have peaks and valleys in our lives, and how can you stay on a peak longer and make the valley duration a little shorter, and what things get you out of a valley and back onto a peak and things. And it was very kind of philosophically sound, and I really liked it. This one I loved, and honestly it changed the way I behave. Younger Next Year. Half of it's written by a doctor, what's his name, Henry S. Lodge, and the other half is written by one of his patients, Chris Crowley. And essentially he got, I loved the doctor's portion, and it was scientific, right? And so there's like cytokines in our body. One of them's a destroyer that's always at play. I believe that's C6. And so it's constantly destroying our cells, so that we can rebuild new ones to adapt to our environment, right? So if we, and he goes back to sort of like the old, living in the Sahara of our great ancestors, right? When it was like they had to like move a lot through the day just to find some food or water, and they ate sort of a certain way, and they exercised a certain way. And so anyway, he says, the C6 is always at play, but you've got to exercise enough to get that, up high enough. It goes up with stress on your body, and then it triggers, I believe, C10. I might be a little off on that, but the one that's the rebuilder, and that rebuilds. So you've got to trigger that every day. So he says exercise to get a good sweat in 6 times a week. Lift weights 2 times a week, cardio or whatever, the others. And so I started doing that, and here I am a few months later. I feel really good. I noticed even though I wasn't training in a specific way, I was more explosive and quick in basketball. I could run longer. I felt in generally better health in every way, and it was just because I'm essentially making sure day in and day out I at least get a good 24 or 5 minute jog in addition to anything I might, other exercise I might do. Prosper. I love this. And actually Randy Garn just lives down the street from me, and I did not know that until I read his book and sort of started digging into what, he's up to. But these guys, I love the idea that they're pushing here. Prosper, right? Create the life you really want. And just such a well laid out plan of action for your life. Let me just read you their 6 practices. He says, locate your Polaris point, live in your prosperity zone, earn from your core, start with what you already have, commit to your prosperity path, take profound action. And it's very, very well done. Sort of an action plan that's put in place for you, and you can literally take each step and break down your life and sort of get this direction that you want to live your life. T.D. Jakes' Instinct, the power to unleash your inborn drive. I loved the way he took like his African safari and some of the insights that he has there. I think he's most known for being a preacher, so he's got kind of that passion, and he's done a lot of different businesses and things. And so sort of teaching people to get to that, like that, back to our like nature, right? And in that we have certain instincts in us that we need to unleash, and that our instincts are more accurate and than we often give credit to, and we need to trust ourselves, put aside the noise from the world and the people that are not, you know, going for us, and achieve what we want. And I've heard a quote from many different people in many different ways, but one of my favorites from him is basically that if you don't use your uniqueness, your time, your talents, and energy to achieve your goals, someone else will use those things to achieve their goals. And I've heard a lot of people say that, but the way he wrote it was magnificent. The Art of Possibility, Transforming Professional and Personal Life, Rosamund Stone Zander and Benjamin Zander. So this is a couple, and he teaches the orchestra for the, why can I think of the name of the orchestra he teaches? Anyway, these two people are like, oh, and she's like a therapist or a psychologist or something. So they sort of had this really like beautiful way of teaching and talking and writing. And so he is like art to the core, right? And, you know, creativity and speaking through music and, you know, creative vibes. And of course she's very good with picking out emotions and defining them and understanding them, and the way they worked together was beautiful. I thought it was magnificent. I was very entertained by their personal stories as well as the points they were trying to make. So I loved that book. My two favorites, and this one I've mentioned several times in many different areas, and I reread it this year. So this is not just a 2017 book. This is like a multiple years book, right? Influencer. Same people that wrote like Crucial Conversations and Crucial Confrontations, as it says back here. So this is one of my favorite books, just because the power to change anything. How can we influence ourselves and others to accomplish great things? And this book, I think, uses such cool and crazy examples of how people changed like massive cultural issues to decrease HIV or, you know, AIDS, to eradicate the something worm, the guinea worm, I believe, in, you know, certain parts of other countries, and like just huge things where you had to literally change the action and behavior of entire peoples and cultures in order to make it happen. And yet they were able to do that. And the reasons why is because you tap into all these different motivators, extrinsic and intrinsic, and I think there's like 3 of each, and why, you know, punishment is usually not a very good, you know, way of finding a solution, and why certain rewards and intrinsic motivators are ways that companies are misusing rewards to actually, they think they're offering something kind to their employees, and at the same time they're unintentionally decreasing motivation. So there was a lot of great insight in there, and I love that book for those reasons. And my favorite of the year was this one right here, Never Split the Difference, Negotiating as If Your Life Depends on It. Chris Voss. So he was the lead hostage negotiator for the FBI for like 14 or 15 years, something like that. And he tells a lot of really fun and intense stories in here, and yet he helps you relate that to business or other, you know, negotiation, you know, tactics and things that the average person might run into, right? We're not all dealing with hostages, but the insights that he gives, and the way that the FBI sort of came from a bad way of negotiating into a good one, which sadly was through experience and failures and whatever, right? But we learn from a failure. So here we are, we can learn from the most intense, biggest failures of people and organizations, and find out what's working, right? And the cool thing for me was as I was reading this book, my business partner and I were trying to get into an event to sell one of the products we sell. And it was all new to us. The product was new. We didn't have a lot of funding and all these things. And so we used his methods when we got a hold of the person in charge, and she said it was $3,000 to have a table. And we just, what he says is essentially say no without saying the word no, right? And so I just said, I just don't know how we can do that. And she said, okay, how about 1,500? I said, well, I really appreciate your generosity, and we would love to participate, but we're a new company, and I just don't think we can. Our budget wouldn't allow it. I don't see how we can do that. Just said it again, and she's like, "Why don't you just tell me how much you can pay?" And so we probably could have even gone lower than we did, but we ended up paying like $500 or something for a place in a conference where others were paying several thousand. And so, cool strategies. Interesting book. I loved that book. And so just kind of how I do this, I have a place where I keep the books that I'm like going to keep sort of as like my personal library, right? I read a lot of books. A lot of them just get tossed back out, and only the best ones that I like do I keep in this place. And so these what, 7 or whatever are gonna be in that category. So I wanted to share those with you guys, and I'll put a link to each of these books below. So if you have an interest in any of them, please go buy those, and that way I'll get a small commission from those at no extra charge to you. And I appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for coming back. Subscribe to this channel if you want more, book reviews and ideas about things that you could be reading to change your life and make an impact on your business, your personal life, your parenting, etc. So anyway, I thank you guys, and we'll catch you next time. Adios.